Michał here, no time to waste. Let's piss off some religious people. Go!
I'm going to argue for the existence of God from the premise that moral good and evil really exist.
Oh boy, not this again. Look, if it's objectively wrong to kill, then if, for example, we have a supervillain that threatens to destroy a city with a nuclear rocket or something, then if it's objectively wrong to kill, and literally the only way to stop him is to kill him, well, then you kind of have a lose-lose situation, because if you're, for example, a sniper, and you have a clear shot to kill the supervillain, but you don't because you have qualms about killing a person, then your options are either to let millions of people die, which you could have prevented, so their deaths would be kind of on you, in which case, you're evil. Or you take the shot, kill the guy, and then you're directly responsible for a person's death, in which case, you're evil. So you see, it is incredibly difficult to argue for objective morality when situations such as these are, well, extremely subjective. And before you go around crying lifeboat scenario, this is a logical fallacy. What if there was a terrorist with a bomb strapped to himself, and you for some reason know that he has them, because he maybe exposed himself just before he blew himself up? Then do you shoot him and take a life, or do you let him blow himself up and kill, well, pretty much everyone around him?
They are not simply a matter of personal taste, not merely substitutes for I like and I don't like.
I agree. I don't like sex, but I don't think it's immoral to do it.
Before I begin, let's get one misunderstanding out of the way. My argument does not mean that atheists can't be moral. Of course, atheists can behave morally, just as theists can behave immorally.
Objection! You just said you want to argue that morality comes from a god. If God doesn't exist and the atheists reject him, then atheists do not act according to the objective morals of the god. If you do not act according to the objective morals of the god, then morality is subjective, something you're trying to disprove. So it looks to me like you're trying to make it out so atheists act morally just because it's a happenstance, not because they are actually good people, and not because they decided to make the right choices, but because, well, somebody rolled the dice and they happen to be good. You're therefore dismissing anything good atheists can do. Either that or they're acting morally because God made it so that they would be acting morally, in which case the argument of free will goes straight out the window, which directly contradicts all of the Bible's claims. Therefore, by trying to do damage control with this disclaimer, you just cornered yourself into a corner where you cannot get out of. The only ways you can go from here is admitting that despite there being an objective standard for morality, some people treat morality as a subjective thing, or there is no such thing as morality because all of our actions are predetermined. And if all our actions are predetermined, then we have no control over it, and if we have no control over it, therefore our actions cannot be moral or immoral. They are just a result of us acting according to our destinies, which we cannot change.
Where do good and evil come from? Atheists typically propose a few possibilities. Among these are evolution, reason, conscience, human nature, and utilitarianism. I will show you that none of these can be the ultimate source of morality. Why not from evolution? Because any supposed morality that is evolving can change.
Yes, that's because, well, the world we live in changes as well. If, for example, we had a world which didn't change at all, then yeah, maybe. But you see, evolution has a single goal in mind, the survival of the species. And this can be often achieved by making it as likely as possible for each individual member of the species to survive. So, for example, if we have a species of humans, and they are going up against a species of wolves, then for the humans it is quote-unquote moral to kill the wolves because they are a threat. But it would be immoral for the humans to kill other humans because by killing the members of their own species they put themselves at an evolutionary disadvantage. This aspect isn't as significant nowadays because, well, we have an abundance of resources. We can afford to be wasteful and we can afford to have more than necessary. We can afford to have a moral standard of having a minimum requirement to allow other people to live at a certain level of wealth and prosperity. This is something that would be impossible in times of the Bible, because if that objective standard was set back then and unchanging, they just wouldn't have the technology to achieve it. They wouldn't have the medical knowledge. So it's really kind of natural for morality to evolve along with our standard of living. But there will still be a universal baseline for morality, such as don't kill, don't steal, etc. And that's because no normal person, well, maybe with some exceptions such as mental illnesses, would want those things never to happen to them. Therefore, we will say that it is quote-unquote objectively moral to not kill people as a general rule, and not to steal shit also as a general rule, because that's something that, well, pretty much none of us would want to happen to. And this is going to be pretty much universal throughout the entire human population. It's simply how we evolve. And just so you aren't wondering, I can make the exact same argument for the human nature part, so I'm just gonna cut that part of the video out, to save time.
If it can change for the good or the bad, there must be a standard above these changes to judge them as good or bad. For most of human history, more powerful societies enslaved weaker societies and prospered. That's just the way it was, and no one questioned it.
Well, then I guess you're okay with slavery because the Bible is the word of God, and the Bible has slavery in it. And not as in, oh, slavery is bad, let's condemn it. No, the Bible actually gives instructions on how to treat slaves. So, not only the Bible is immoral according to our modern standards, you're saying that this subjectively immoral thing is objectively moral. Either that, or the Bible isn't the word of God, so you're gonna have to find something else to latch onto.
Now we condemn slavery. But based on a merely evolutionary model, that is, an ever-changing view of morality, who is to say that it won't be acceptable again one day? Slavery was once accepted, but it was not therefore acceptable. And if you can't make that distinction between accepted and acceptable, you can't criticize slavery. And if you can make that distinction, you are admitting to objective morality.
Or you're admitting that this is unacceptable by subjective present standards.
What about reasoning? While reasoning is a powerful tool to help us discover and understand morality, it cannot be the source of morality.
You know what? I think you're not entirely wrong.
For example, criminals use reasoning to plan a murder, without their reason telling them that murder is wrong. And was it reasoning or something higher than reasoning that led those Gentiles who risked their life to save Jews during the Holocaust? The answer is obvious. It was something higher than reasoning.
No. I wouldn't say that morality is higher than reasoning. I would say that morality complements reasoning. Because, well, whatever the decision to help them was, motivated by, well, it was reasoning that told them that they would be capable to do it. If they just, I don't know, didn't try to think at all about this moral or immoral complex and just tried to brute force it, without the reasoning, their moral action would be in vain. My problem here is not your claim that reason wasn't the reason they did it, but I do have a problem with your claim that reason is way lower than morality. And what about doctors? Let's say we have two doctors and one of them is a doctor because saving lives is a good thing, and the other might be doing it because it's a job that pays extremely well. Even though he's motivated by reasoning, his actions are ultimately moral.
Nor can conscience alone be the source of morality.
I'm not even gonna address this. Conscience is a result of having a moral standard. I'm not gonna say you're trying to commit a fallacy here, but I am saying that you got the result and cause wrong.
Utilitarianism is the claim that what is morally right is determined by whatever creates the greatest happiness for the greatest number. But to return to our slavery example, if 90% of the people would get great benefit from enslaving the other 10%, would that make slavery right?
No, it wouldn't. However, there is another solution to this. What if we paid the 10% to compensate them for their work and effort? That way the 10% would be happy, and the other 90%, which only got rid of the disposable income, which was necessary for them to have a pretty good standard of living, could also be happy. Granted, they may not be as happy with golden yachts as they would be with platinum yachts, but they are still gonna have yachts. The 10% would not be enslaved, and they could also afford very small yachts. Or better yet, why not ask if there's gonna be 10% people who share the same utilitarian view and who would be happy to volunteer to do the same works as slaves would out of their own volition? And 100% is happy, even though this is an utilitarian solution. Furthermore, even in this utilitarian perspective, there would be people who would be against slavery in the 90%. And they would not be happy about the 10% who are enslaved because, well, they could be next. Or they could have been in those 10%. So 90% people are definitely not gonna be happy in your solution. But in mine, again, this, 20 to 30 to 50% of people who are against slavery are also gonna be happy because nobody's going to be enslaved and nobody's going to be threatened by slavery. He then goes on to come up with how this proves that God exists. But since I already destroyed his premise, every conclusion based on this is going to be wrong. And while I mostly want to just cut the whole video out, there is one more thing I want to address.
The very existence of morality proves the existence of something beyond nature and beyond man. Just as a design suggests a designer, moral commands suggest a moral commander. Moral laws must come from a moral lawgiver.
What if, and I know this is kind of a hard idea to swallow, but bear with me. What if, maybe, possibly, potentially, this could be a result of a... Get this concept, I know it's hard, but just consider it. Maybe it's a result of a self-regulating system. A system that is best suited to the current conditions. A system which is going to be always the best it can be, because that's just how it, well, happens to be. It keeps adjusting itself to be better. It just keeps getting more fit to the conditions it is currently in. That's how organisms evolved to be as, well, intelligently, quote-unquote, they're designed. And maybe this is how we come to have a moral standard. I mean, have you ever considered that notion? It would be a system who wouldn't need a commander, a designer, a guy on top. It would just be always from the bottom up. Mind-blowing, right?
Well, that sounds pretty much like what we know as God.
Sorry, I'm back now. But oh my god, sorry, but this is just incredibly funny. If you don't get why I'm laughing, just check out that video. The one on the screen that you can click, and if you can't, just hit the card up. It's another video I made. It's where I examine what sins the God in the Bible commits, at least among the main 7. So, yeah, go watch that and you'll understand why it's so funny to me. And since you're already checking out my other stuff, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It's gonna inform you whenever I come up with a new video. Hell, maybe it'll be fun enough to debunk it on your own. It's definitely not gonna be morally wrong.